Okay, in this video, I'm going to be adding the detail to the mouth in the underdrawing portion of my portrait. So I've got my mouth tutorial up and I've got a photo reference. It's maybe not the clearest in the mouth area, but we will do our best. Got a couple of different pencils here to add shading when we get to that part. All right, so this mouth tutorial that I have starts out differently than what I did as the underdrawing here, but I'm going to just add some of these aspects to what we already have. So I still have, you can lightly see this line of symmetry down the center of the mouth. So I just made that a little bit darker. And we are going to have, you may have done yours with a little dip in the center here. So we are going to end up having a little dip there where you can see that there is kind of a V or a dip in the middle of the top lip. I'm going to start with these circles that you see in the tutorial, and one of them will go right there. And you can see it is going to go a little bit above the lip. And then we're also going to have these circles down here. One thing I do want to say, most people have a fuller lower lip than upper lip. So I would recommend making this upper lip a little bit thinner and the lower lip a little bit thicker. All right, so next up, so that's that. Now I already pretty much have that little dip in there, but if you don't have that, go ahead and add that. And then I'm going to put a line that kind of goes down a little bit and then up. And actually, we're going to have ours eventually, it's going to go down a little bit, but it's eventually going to go back up towards the end. And you can kind of look and see what you see in the mirror here or in your photo reference. So I'm kind of seeing mine maybe go up a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and draw mine that way. All right, it's already looking more like lips. Down here at the bottom, I'm going to connect these two. They may have a slight kind of upward dip in the middle there, or they might just be flat along the bottom. Mine's pretty flat if I'm looking in the mirror, and then does start to curve a bit there. All right, so then that takes us to this part of the drawing. So we are extending this line, but we are not, I repeat, not attaching it all the way to this outer part of the lip. So one of the big things about lips that makes them hard to draw is that they actually sort of have somewhat fuzzy edges most of the time. So we're not going to attach those. All right, same thing over here. We're going to go up toward this edge, but not fully attach it, just kind of fade out there. All right, and we also are going to start to add this upper line. Now, in this drawing, they're kind of making this curve outward. When I look at my lip, it does not have as much of an outward curve there. So you would look at your lip and try to copy however you see that edge of the lip. So I'm going to have mine kind of come down a little bit more as it goes out to that corner of the mouth. And then on the other side, again, mine will not curve outward as much. It's just going to come down and attach. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that part there because it's just sort of in the way. And I can kind of look and see what's in the mirror and maybe adjust what I think that looks like a little bit. I don't want to make it super dark though. I'm just trying to adjust the shape a little bit to look like what I see. Other things, and these are so small, or so light, I should say, that you may barely see them, but they're putting in some very subtle lines there and there, and that's going to help indicate where some of the shading is going to go. So I could lightly put in a line, and this is just sort of curving over these. So something like that. Those are not going to be heavy lines, but they're just sort of to talk about the shading. They also have sort of some light curving lines over those circles or spheres, really. They're trying to show that they are spheres. All right. So we're getting there. We're getting there. All right. And then finally, they are shading. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to zoom in a little bit here to add the shading. The first thing I want you to notice is how they do have this white or very light area here, and then it gets darker, lighter again, and then a little bit darker. One of the other things I did mention that the edges of the lips do tend to be not really, really hard lines. So I'm going to kind of erase this outline before I fill it in. All right, I'm going to start shading this center part kind of like a sphere. So shading underneath it a little bit, shading this part there. And I'm going to zoom in, I think, so you can see a little better. Where's my zoom button? There it is. All right, so I'm kind of shading underneath. I'm avoiding a little area there, then I'm shading, then I'm letting it get lighter up here. And then I'm going to shade up to this part. And then on either side, I'm going to not shade right along this line, but shade lightly a little bit above it. And over here. And here, starting to come down to this edge. And then I'm going to shade from this top edge down a little bit, letting it get just slightly lighter maybe. Okay. Then I'm going to go in and I'm going to make this line itself fairly dark there. Especially here at the center. And I'm going to shade down from that. I'm going to shade kind of in this direction. I've got curves coming here, curves coming there. If you're seeing these edges of these spheres super, super dark, you might want to get rid of that. If you're seeing this line in the center super, super dark, we don't want any of these to end up having really, really clear edges. But I'm going to shade with the curve that was there. Shade with the curve that was there. And I'm coming down from here and I'm letting it get light in the center here. And coming up from the bottom, and I'm using these sort of curving marks. And you don't have to have these totally, totally separate. We're going to blend these a little bit, but we are trying to get that curve in there. All right, I'm going to add a little more shading here. I don't want this dark shadow to just stand out. I want it to kind of fade in. To what's around there. Then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take my blending tool. Here it is. So again, this is just a paper towel that I just folded in half a bunch of times and then folded into a triangle at the corner. All right, so I can blend this, and I'm blending again with this kind of curving motion. Blending this top lip as well. And if any of this, if you're seeing too much line or anything, I would just go in And we don't want these to have hard lines or hard edges. So I can always erase a little bit. And add more shading as well. All right. And so I'm going to go ahead and keep going with that. So I don't want this to have a super, super hard edge. I do want it to get a little darker at the corners on the top lip. So you can see how this center of the top lip has a little bit more highlight, just like this center of the bottom lip does as well. But notice how it just kind of disappears a little bit out at these corners. We don't have like a hard edge over there. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start shading around the lips a little bit. So underneath here, underneath the nose, right here in this divot, I'm going to shade like so. I'm going to shade, kind of put in an area like so, and shade a little bit toward each corner of the mouth. So you can see the pink part of the lips doesn't go all the way out to here, but this little kind of right where those like little corners of the mouth comes all the way out to right there, but not the pink part. All right, over here again, adding that kind of shaded area in here. And we can very, very lightly shade in here a little bit. And then underneath the mouth, we're going to have an area, and this is a little bit separate, so I'm leaving this white area in here. See how this has sort of a white area, so you've got shading, and then again this highlight, and then dark underneath there. And it's going to kind of make a shape like this and this, and how pronounced that is would depend person to person. And I'm getting rid of some of that underdrawing in here. I want to remember where that is, but I don't want it to show through my shading. So I can lighten that up. And we don't want to have hard edges here. So if you did too much of a hard line, you want to get rid of that hard line. I'm kind of shading against that line to create a soft edge. If you have some extra dimples out here or even out here, you would shade those in. So I've got kind of another little dimple right there. All right, so this is looking a little whiskery. We don't want it to stay whiskery. So again, using the blending tool. If it's not blending enough, I would go in there and I would continue to erase, make sure that doesn't look whiskery. We just want it to look like a shadow and fairly smooth in there. Up here, we would want to blend that kind of into this area. So we do have kind of a light shadow in here and then getting lighter right above the pigmented lip area. And if you have any of this underdrawing in here, you're going to go ahead and erase that. You don't want that showing through as we're starting to add shading. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the remains of that underdrawing. All right, I can blend that a little bit more. So basically that's looking fairly lip-like. You can see the texture in here a little bit, and we do want that. If you blended all of that out, you could go back and add it in a little bit more. Anything else that you might see, so I'm seeing a little bit more maybe of a shadow like so underneath my lip. If I might change the lip shape a little bit. So again, I think mine kind of come in a little bit more here. So I could keep playing with that until I kind of feel like I'm getting it just right. But those are all just in particular to what I'm seeing when I'm looking at my reference photo. All right, I think that's basically going to do it. I might add a little bit more shading out there just with my blending tool. But that is basically going to be it. So I will zoom out now again so we can see it. In context. All right, so that is the lips. Okay, I'm going to continue this a little bit to keep working on shading the chin underneath the mouth. So if you have some of these side lines like so, which I think I must have forgotten to add those to mine, but I would have had those. So at this point, you would have either already erased them or you're starting to erase them. I'm going to erase that circle or oval that is the chin, but I'm going to replace it by kind of shading around that area. So I'm shading kind of around this in a circular direction, and I'm shading up here. So I can leave a little bit at either side, and this might be the very bottom of my face down here. So notice that bottom of the chin might get a little bit lost in shadow, but if you look really closely, there is reflected light there. So we can even go on to add some shading around the jawline. So I'm just cleaning up that jawline, making sure I kind of know where that is ending. So I am shading along that, and I'm going to let it get a little bit lighter toward the bottom edge there. So just like we did with that sphere. So then I'm shading that kind of in a somewhat circular way. I'm shading in and up from this part of the jawline. So you don't want to see anything whiskery looking there once you blend it. So if it wasn't shaded in neat enough that you can blend it out, then you'll want to go back in, erase, and reshade. And while we're at it down here, we're also going to shade on the other side of this. So we shaded up, but I am also shading down. So I'm making that, and it's actually a bit darker. So I added that shading coming down from the jawline there. And I might continue that shading later on as I add more to the bottom part of the portrait, the hair, the neck, etc. But for now, I'll just leave that be.